It has been a week of turmoil in the North African nation of Libya. And with more today, as the two-year-old government struggles to control the country, a car bomb exploded outside the Swedish consulate in the eastern Libyan city of Benghazi on Friday, damaging the building's front and nearby houses, but no casualties were immediately reported. It comes a day after Libya's Prime Minister Ali Zaidan was briefly abducted by a group of former rebels Friday. He called the abduction a coup attempt. And on Monday, protesters took to the streets of Benghazi, charging the government with involvement in the raid by U.S. Special Forces last weekend. Anas al-Libi, they captured al-Qaeda suspect Abu Anas al-Libi, outraging Islamist militants who called for revenge attacks. Gabor Rona is International Legal Director for Human Rights First, and he's with us here in our New York studio. Thank you so much for coming back and being with us, Gabor.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Now that Abu Anas al-Libi has been detained, we know him to be on a naval vessel being interrogated without being Mirandized, without having representation. How long can he be held out there?
That's indefinite. The U.S. claims that he's being held under law of war authority, and the U.S. claims that under that authority he can be held until what's called the end of hostilities. Now, in a war against a terrorist organization that has worldwide reach, who knows when the end of hostilities will be? And it would be much preferable that instead of being held indefinitely under this international legal framework of war, he be brought to the United States where he's already been charged with crimes and be put on trial, if convicted, sentenced, and dealt with in the regular course of the criminal justice system.
Is the U.S. interpreting this, as have you told us, the law of war authority creatively in order to do this? We're not at war with Libya.
Right. We're not at war with Libya, but the claim is that he's a member of al-Qaeda and the U.S. is at war with al-Qaeda. The problem with that is that al-Qaeda today is such an amorphous concept. It's not like being at war against a particular country. And the U.S. is stretching this law of war authority somewhat beyond the breaking point.
So what happens next for him?
Well, he's going to be interrogated for a while, as you said, without Miranda warnings, without having lawyers representing him. But hopefully what this means, the fact that he was arrested rather than, say, targeted by drones, is an indication that President Obama is making good on what he said he would do a few months ago, which is to bring this so-called war on terror to an end and instead rely on the criminal justice system, rely on captures rather than kills, rely on bringing people into normal courts rather than to Guantanamo and the failed military commissions there.
And that's what I was going to ask you next. I guess there are a few scenarios that are possible. They could take him to Guantanamo. He could be tried in a military court. He could be brought to the U.S. and perhaps tried in a civilian court, say here, right here in New York City. What do you think is the most likely at this point?
Well, President Obama has made very clear his intention to close Guantanamo. He's run into some roadblocks along the way, particularly roadblocks put in front of him by Congress. But the one thing that I think we can be pretty confident of is that he's not going to want to increase the population of Guantanamo. And it makes perfect sense that this terrorist suspect would be brought into the mainland of the United States, into federal custody, into the normal criminal justice system, rather than be brought to Guantanamo. Because if he is sent to Guantanamo, then one of the principal things that we need to be concerned about, which is accountability of terrorists, is not going to be met. Because the criminal justice system doesn't operate in Guantanamo. The military commission trials that have been taking place there have been an abysmal failure over the course of more than the last 10 years. Meantime, the normal criminal justice system has prosecuted hundreds of international terrorism suspects without any security breaches, without any problems, lots of convictions, and is really the much more logical way to go.
And briefly, before I let you go, what difference does it make whether or not Libya or Libyan officials cooperated in this operation?
Well, the United States wants to claim that it had permission from the Libyan authorities to undertake this operation. If the United States had that permission, then the United States is not violating the sovereignty of Libya. Whereas if the Libyans didn't consent, then in addition to the problems of whether it's wartime or a peacetime capture, there would be a problem of state-to-state relations between the U.S. and Libya that the United States might have to answer for.
It's going to be very interesting to see. Gabor Rona, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank
Good
you.
to see you.